welcome to yet another episode of the Let's Talk Leadership podcast. This is a show where I, Elly, MD of Transition Partners, and the CEO, Sandra, talk to some of the world's highest achieving business and tech leaders.
In each episode, we will be sharing tales, tips, techniques, and war stories in the hope that you will learn from some of these amazing leaders to help you develop and progress your career.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Let's Talk Leadership podcast. So today we have the lovely Charaka Goonatilake, who's CTO at Panacea. Charaka describes himself as a fan of all things big data, especially applied to cybersecurity challenges. He's currently heading up an awesome team at Panacea who aim to help clients measure and understand security performance with continuous controls monitoring. So hello.
Hey, Elly, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
Hi. So good today. It's so fantastic to have you on the podcast. How are you?
I'm good. It's cold up here in Reigate, snowing.
Have you got much snow down in London? I mean, we've got a little bit. We've got about 2 inches in Leeds.
No, not really that much. It's been blustery. It's definitely cold, but there's not much settling at the moment.
I mean, I'm feeling very blessed because I was on the phone earlier to my colleague, Sarah, over in Berlin, and it's -8 this morning.
Oh, wow.
I feel happy to be in sunny Leeds. So it'll be fantastic then, Charaka, if we could start the podcast. We're finding out about your journey, how you got to where you are today. Let's go all the way back and find out what led you to your CTO position.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I've been around a bit. I mean, my family's originally from Sri Lanka. I've lived in a couple of different places. I've lived in Sri Lanka, was born here in the UK, lived about 10 years in Austria as well, in Vienna.
Oh, wow.
And most of my life I've lived here in the UK in various places. I guess from a career and education perspective, I've probably had a relatively traditional background. So I studied computer science as an undergrad. I worked in academia for a short while as well.
I saw that. Amazing.
Yeah.
You did your PhD at Cambridge then?
Well, I was working on a PhD at Cambridge, but I never actually finished it there. I moved on from there before I finished it.
Wow.
But my whole sort of background has been around using data. So in academia, I was using data for modeling. In my research assistant role, I was building data platforms, essentially to do some heavy number crunching. And then my first sort of proper job was at a company called Dedica, which was bought by BAE Systems, which is a much bigger company. And essentially it was as a software engineer. And I joined what was at that time a fledgling cybersecurity division of Dedica. And it was a really exciting time because we were working on software that was using data analytics to find cyber attackers who had managed to infiltrate a company's network. So, using lots and lots of data, analyzing that data for oddities, signs of malicious activities. And actually what we ended up doing was we took that software that we originally built to be used in-house. We packaged it up as a product that we took to market. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I had a really exciting opportunity to get involved in the more sales and customer facing side. So I was working as a pre-sales engineer, essentially helping our sales team sell the product, talk about the technical benefits, the value of the product, and ultimately deliver the product to our customers as well.
Amazing.
Unfortunately, BAE Systems at that time weren't really ready to invest in a new product, and it wasn't really going anywhere. And the team that I was working with at BAE Systems, we had been talking about potentially starting something of our own. And that was initially how Panacea began. We all sort of left BAE Systems within 6 months of each other. And Nick, our CEO and founder, was the first one, and he went out there, raised some money, and got the original team together.
Amazing.
And that
So how
was
many of you was it in total that left BAE then to
So it was
Panacea?
about four of us. Nick, who was running sales in that team that I was in at BAE, he became the founder and CEO. Mike, who was, built a lot of the analytics, became our chief scientist and is now our VP of product. And Soph, who was running various marketing activities at BAE Systems, is now our chief of staff. So that original
full squad. That's so
it's still there.
cool.
That team to this day,
Awesome.
six years on, we're still together. And we started off as four people working out of a basement, a typical startup story. Actually, in Nick's basement, just down the road here in Reigate. We started off as that team together, and now 6 years later, we're a team of 60 people spread across the UK and the US as well.
Wow.
And I mean, it's been an absolutely incredible journey, going from the four of us just trying to figure out what we're doing, building some of the initial products, the early iterations of the products, then moving on to building teams, building the early teams. And yeah, I mean, in these kinds of startup roles, there's no 2 days are the same. Every few months, the role is evolving, and that's what I really love about this kind of environment, because you're always feeling stretched. You're always feeling like you're making progress, either personally or as a company. And it's that challenge that I find motivates me and gets me up in the morning.
Sounds fantastic, and it sounds like a really exciting business, and what a way to set it up. I mean, your background is really interesting actually, because you've got a well-rounded experience, haven't you? You've got the research side of it, the actual doing, the Hadoop, big data, and then the sales side of aspect as well, which is really interesting. One thing that I'd like to kind of discuss a little bit further, because we haven't got some, I don't actually think we've interviewed anyone on the podcast, Let's Talk Leadership podcast, from a background in academia. And sometimes it can be quite tough for people to make the transition. So it'd be interesting. I know as a recruiter, that's something that I face quite often. They've got all the technical skills, that amazing background, working on some really interesting projects, but then translating that and turning it into sort of more on that commercial side of it can be really challenging. Have you got any sort of like tips or thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think anyone coming into the commercial world is it's going to be a learning curve to get up to speed with thinking in terms of the business impact, the value that you're delivering to the business and your end customers. I think that's always going to be hard, whether you're a straight grad out of an undergrad or a postgrad. I think an academic background, what it can give you that maybe you might not be getting from someone straight out of an undergrad is you have to learn some soft skills around how you organize yourself, how you motivate yourself, how you drive yourself. I think there's a lot of skills that you need when you're doing research, which can be very valuable and can be translated as a transferable skill into the commercial world as well.
100%. I definitely agree with that. And that's some great tips there, I think, which will certainly help others that are struggling. Let's talk then about your leadership style and skills, because so your first leadership role, was that when you joined Panacea, or had you led people and managed before?
Yeah, I mean, I think at BAE Systems, I would call myself as more as a manager. I did run a small team of initially engineers, and then a team of pre-sales engineers as well.
Wow.
But I think it was only really when I came to Panacea where I started to really start to think and learn about the art of leadership, because that was when I had to properly run a big team. And also before that, that's when I really had to, by myself, attract a team to come and work for me as well. At BAE Systems, you were given people that you had to lead. But the difference in a startup environment is that you are building that team yourself from scratch. And there's a lot of great inspiration out there in terms of different leadership philosophies. And one of the things that I always try to do is consume and learn as much as I can from mentors and coaches. As well as from the literature. So there's plenty of leadership books out there. And I guess the sorts of things that have stuck with me, the things that have gelled with my own style. There's many facets to leadership, but a couple that really come to mind. One of them is around creating psychological safety, and an environment where people can be free, can be themselves, be authentic, can speak up, and really fostering an environment where they can bring their whole selves, they can be their best selves, and creating an environment where people can feel comfortable just collaborating and innovating. So I really value the more empathetic and emotional sides of leadership. I think there's a lot of value that leaders can bring in terms of bringing clarity. So giving the team purpose, presenting a vision, and helping them to see and imagine a future that they can create. I think, especially when we think about how do you attract people to come and work in a startup when there's so many opportunities out there for them. I think giving them a purpose and giving them something to look forward to. I think that's really a key tool, a key duty of a leader. Yeah.
I think that's really great. I think, like you say, like the art of storytelling to be able to show people the end goal and what they've got to look forward to is amazing. So CTO at the moment, how many people are you responsible for?
So I've got about a team of 20. So the whole engineering team, which includes various front-end engineers, data platform engineers, DevOps engineers, QA. That whole function is under me.
And the space that you work in, like you say, you mentioned about like talent attraction earlier. It's a super competitive space, and you're working with some big brands. Like before, when you were working at BAE, the brand really speaks for itself, right? So hiring's not a problem. How have you found that challenge from a startup perspective, and have you got any tips for anyone in a similar position?
Yeah, I mean that's really an area that we've put a lot of time and effort into. I remember even one of the vivid memories that I have is hiring the first members of the team around May of 2015, so just under 6 years ago, and it was a really challenging time because as we said, like it's a hyper competitive market, especially in London. There's so many opportunities out there, so many companies who can pay good money, so many exciting startup opportunities as well. So how do you differentiate in that kind of market? And right at the beginning, we knew we were never going to win on money. So we had to find other ways that we could attract the right kind of people who would thrive in this kind of money, in this kind of environment. And one of the things that we put a lot of effort into is the job spec. So that's really the first impression that a candidate will get of the company, the people, the role that they're applying to. And we put a lot of emphasis in selling all of that through the job spec. So talking about what awesome opportunity to grow we would be able to offer new candidates. I genuinely believe that a startup environment gives people an unparalleled exposure to learn new skills. I mean, there's no other place where you can see a business grow, all the dimensions of a business grow, and really have an impact, if you want, in all aspects of that. There's no other place other than a startup where you're going to get that. And there's some people who are really motivated and inspired by those kinds of opportunities, and that's what we wanted to appeal to, those kinds of people. We focused a lot about the tech, what kind of tech skills they would be able to pick up on. And we also spent quite a lot of time, and this is something that's been evolving over the years, in emphasizing the company values and culture. So talking about how we think about creating a diverse and inclusive environment, what kinds of expectations we have of people in terms of the commitment, the low ego that we expect people to have. And I think that really paints a picture of the kinds of people who will thrive in the Panacea environment. We also put a lot of effort into some of the finer details as well, like the actual words in the job spec. I don't know if you've come across tools like Textio, which is like a machine learning analysis of your job spec, and it really identifies words that are non-inclusive maybe, or may not appeal to different demographics, and really helped us construct a job spec that was more inclusive.
So important.
Yeah,
it
yeah,
sounds
absolutely.
like so much thought and time has gone into your job descriptions. That's super important, isn't it? And throughout the process, the interview process as well, it's really important. I love the fact that you were saying about everyone being able to come to Panacea and be their authentic selves, and creating that culture is really important. It sounds like you've done a great job of that. I'd love to know then, I guess, a little bit more about how you've motivated and kept that kind of drive within the business through the past 12 months and all this time of change for people, because it's not been easy. From a personal perspective, I know before we start recording today, you've got a 5-year-old son, you've got a new puppy, it sounds like you've got a busy life yourself, you're away from your family in Sri Lanka, but then running a business alongside of that, running a team of 20, which sounds like it's growing as well. How have you done that? And have you got any tips for anyone out there that's struggling?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not been a easy time for anyone during the pandemic, and for others, it's been really, really tough. And I feel personally quite privileged to have it relatively easy, to be honest. When the pandemic first started around, the first lockdown in March, April of 2020. We were quite decisive, and we took some pretty quick action. Something we realized was that in this time of great uncertainty for everyone, I mean, we were focusing on our staff, but there was a lot of uncertainty for everyone. We had to create certainty. We had to we had to give them something that was predictable. And we realized that looking at our company finances, we had to make some cuts to secure the financial future of the business. And unfortunately, that initially meant that we had to let some people go, which was really difficult thing to do, especially in this climate. Letting people go out into the workforce in a time where so many businesses were shutting up shop, and it was very difficult to find new working opportunities. That was a really, really difficult thing to do, but we realized that we had to make that tough decision for the benefit of the wider business and the workforce that was remaining in the business. And we were very clear in why we were doing it, how we were doing it. And within I think by the end of April, so within that first month, we had made all those decisions. And I think what that really helped was bring some stability. I was talking about the certainty. The certainty, I think, brought some stability to the business. I think the next sort of phase that we went into was really starting to understand what do all these external factors going on around us mean for our business and for our staff. And we did a couple of things to try and figure out what the working environment at Panacea had to become, what it had to evolve to become. We did some internal surveys where we were surveying the staff about how they felt about what they need from a workplace. And I think we found out from that survey that everyone misses the personal connection of being in an office and collaborating in person in an office. Very few people wanted to go fully remote. What we found was that the younger members of staff, maybe earlier in their careers, wanted to spend more time in an office. They probably had less space at home in living in flats in central London, and they probably lived close to the office anyway. And then there were the older generations who were maybe later in their careers, had families, maybe had more space, and wanted to spend less time on trains commuting into offices.
Of course,
But I think what we came up with was combining both that internal perspective as well as what we could learn from other remote companies. What we figured out was that the right option for Panacea was a hybrid working solution where we would offer flexible working environments, so people could choose to go into offices.
So at that point, then you got rid of the office.
Yeah. Actually, in April of last year, we got rid of our office. We were actually in a very lucky position because our tenancy was coming up to renewal at that point. Anyway,
such good timing.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if we hadn't been thrown into a situation, you probably never would have asked the question and never done that kind of really open, honest survey with your team. And you never know, potentially, maybe the team members who are later on in their career with families and that and a bit more stability. You never know, like retention. They might have been offered a job fully remote and just gone and gone from that for a perspective without having those discussions about actually you don't really need to be in the office. And what is the office? The office doesn't have to be one fixed location that they call the Panacea HQ. It could be anywhere, which is the option that you've done, which is the flexible offices through like serviced offices like WeWork, for example.
That's right. Yeah.
This is so interesting.
Yeah, and I think it's I think in the future, I don't think anyone is going to want to come back to this kind of 9 to 5, Monday to Friday in an office type of environment. And I think, again, going back to what I was talking about, how do you differentiate as an employer? I think providing options, providing that flexibility, flexibility of where you live, flexibility of where you can work from, and really providing the tools and the guidelines that help the teams be productive in those environments is really what's going to attract more people, I think.
Of course. So when you're hiring now for the future, then you're looking at any location as long as you can come to these collaboration sessions every so as and when required.
Yeah, that's right. So how we've set up is we've got company-wide guidelines, but then there's also team-specific requirements essentially, because some teams may need to get together more often, others may not need to meet as often. But then what we've said is that when you're hiring within those teams, you set out those guidelines and requirements and you hire against them. So some of them, we might say that we need someone who can travel into the London office once a quarter. And then it's entirely up to the candidate where they live or where they want to work, as long as they can come in when we need them to.
Amazing. Yeah, it's really exciting, isn't it? Because I was speaking to someone actually last week that was saying once all this is over in the next couple of years, that it really is going to be the rise of the digital nomad again, because people are going to want to travel and we're going to want to see the world because we've been locked down for so long. And so many young people who had intentions of that have now gone into their career as a result of that. And they're still going to want to be able to do that at some point. So the digital nomad thing is certainly going to be more of an option than ever before, and it sounds like you'd probably be able to achieve that quite nicely with Panacea if you're in the right team. So that's amazing. That's really great. Now, as a leader then, the past couple of months, like what's your real pain points? What have you got on the agenda right now that you're really kind of struggling with and trying to thrash out as a leader of a growing, scaling business?
Yeah, so I mean, we're in a probably somewhat unusual, but very fortunate situation that
Yeah.
last year was actually our best year to date at Panacea.
Wow.
So we're very lucky, and we've got some good problems to have in that there are a number of growing pains. We've probably more than doubled our customer base over the last 12 months, and at the same
Fantastic.
time we've probably because of the nervousness around the pandemic, we probably haven't grown our teams as aggressively as maybe we should have, given the business growth.
Mm.
So I think now it's really about how do we adjust to that growth? How do we change the organization's scale the organization so that it can meet the demands of this growing customer base? We're in the product that we're building is in a brand new category. So this is not it's not something that the world has seen before, and the first sort of 4 years of our existence has really been about educating the market that there is a real problem here for security teams in the enterprise, and we have a solution that can solve that problem. And I think now the tide is starting to shift where the market gets it. There is lots of external third-party validation that there is a problem here. So it's really about how do we adjust our organization, grow the teams, and inevitably grow the processes and tools that we have to support those teams, so that we don't break as we expand out.
And it's such a crucial time in the business, isn't it? When you've got a team of like circa 60 at the moment, that next step is huge. So being able to, like I say, foster that culture through this time of growth is going to be really interesting to watch. So can't wait to keep an eye on it. I'd love to know then, I always think as a leader, you learn the most through sort of adversity and challenge. So is there one particular moment in your career that still sort of like keeps you up at night or makes the hair stand up on the end of your skin around like a real project failure or something that happened, but a poignant moment that you then learnt the most from, that you can share with us a story today?
Yeah, I mean, I think at Panacea, I can't really put my finger on anything at the moment. There's adversity, there's problems every day, and
That's startup life there, hey?
well, exactly, and if you can't step away from it and just put it into perspective, you're not gonna get very far in this kind of industry. I think if I was to look back over my career, I think moving on from my PhD without having finished it was probably the one that I have a regret about. I think on one hand, I do have a regret. On the other hand, I feel it's something that's changed the way I work, and I think since then it's really motivated me to not be defined by that moment and think about what could I have done differently in that moment. How can I basically not have that as the defining thing in my career, and I think that's probably changed my motivations and my ambitions to kind of almost not erase it, but not make it such a prominent thing in my career history.
Yeah. Whilst we talk about then your ambitions, like what is the long-term goal for you and the team at Panacea then? Global domination?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really exciting time at Panacea. As I said, the early part of the company was about creating the market, and I think now we're getting to the point where this market actually exists, and we at Panacea are ideally poised to capitalize on this market that's developing now. So I'm really excited about the prospects for the business over the next couple of years. I think acquiring more customers in new sectors, in new geographies, growing out the team so that we can service those customers, and really being part of a journey that is at a whole nother scale to where we are today is really what I'm excited about. And the motivation for me is get to a point where there is some kind of end in this journey. Hopefully a successful one, but being able to look back, well, hopefully something where I can look back and say, look, I was there on day one, and I'm here at the end of the journey, and I can say that I had some part in taking the company from that really early stage, from incubation through to a successful business. I think that's really what drives me.
You're so very humble. Some part in that process, like I'm sure a pretty big part.
It's true. I mean, with 60 people in the business today and growing, I'm only a relatively small cog, and I can't. You quite quickly realize that there's very little that you can actually do as a in a growing business on your own, right? You are so dependent on your team, which is why I feel like a lot of my time goes into investing in the team and growing their capacity, growing their capability, and really keeping them happy as well, so that they feel like they have a long journey left at Panacea as well.
Okay, yeah, I could definitely agree with that. What about looking after, I guess, yourself? You've come with a really sort of like chilled kind of zen feel to your leadership experience. But how do you manage that? Obviously, there's a lot of stress and pressure with a startup, but you don't give off that vibe at all. So how do you manage that? The sort of like your health and well-being. So when you do turn up to work like you have for the podcast today, you can be the very best version of yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is so important to look after yourself. I think over the years that's become more and more clear, because as you go on in your career, there's never more time. If anything, there is less time. There's more demands on your time, and understanding some simple techniques like you're never going to be able to do everything that's piling up on your to-do list, and knowing how you can access your your team to be able to help you. The ability to delegate, I think, is so important as well. Something that was really difficult for me to do early on in my career, where I thought,
really?
It was I had to do everything. If I wanted it done right, I had to do it. I think I've definitely changed my outlook from that perspective. I think another thing that's really important for me, has been really effective for me, is the understanding of the mind, and understanding that about 2 years ago, the whole leadership team at Panacea went on a retreat. It was like a training program called Quality of Mind, which was it was kind of like mindfulness, but taking it to a whole nother level, where mindfulness is about being aware of your thoughts and being present. This was a slightly different type of teaching, where it was the realization that everything, your whole experience, your whole reality is created in your head by your thoughts. And the feelings of stress and overwhelm, they're nothing more than thoughts that have been fabricated in your head.
Yeah.
And while it's not as easy as to say, it's just a fake thought in my head that I'm super stressed and I can just switch it off. I think the realization that your mind creates these things was really a big relief for me. That when you become aware of it, it immediately just calms you down and it puts things into perspective, really.
I think it gives you that sense of control, doesn't it? That you can kind of reprogram it and think of it in different ways. But it's easy to be said once you realize, isn't it? It's when you're in the depth of it, of the stress, and that it can easily feel overwhelming. So I think that's some really good advice. And it sounds like a good course. So was that just a day course then you took the team on?
It was actually 3. It was pretty intense, and
Wow.
yeah.
Did you get some amazing feedback from the team then? Did everyone feel like they took a lot away from it?
Yeah. I think generally, as we took that as a way that if you think the leadership team is probably the most important team in the company because of the impact that we have on the business. And it was we went on that course because we had to find ways for the leadership team to work seamlessly and work very collaboratively, and that course really teaches you not only about how your mind works, but through the realization of how your mind works, you can start to understand that everybody has a different reality, everyone has a different perspective, and really being empathetic to that really helps people to work better together.
Sounds like it probably gave your leadership team some really good tools, particularly over the past year where empathetic leadership has never been more important. So
that's right.
That's brilliant. Sounds like a great idea. What's the best bit of leadership advice that you can share today? Either something that you feel like yourself is something that you've learned, or I guess someone told you and you thought, do you know what, that means a lot to me? And I think if I could tell everyone one piece of advice, that would be it.
I think the one thing that I think is something useful for everyone to keep in mind is that the leaders are not just the people at the top of the organization. It's not your boss, it's not your manager. Everybody can exhibit leadership behaviors, right? And I think it can really reframe people's perspective if they can think, hang on, I can do some things that are exhibiting leadership behaviors. Doing simple things like putting the company mission first, thinking about the company and not thinking about yourself and how you're going to get everything that you need for yourself. Speaking truth, right? I think that's one of the hardest things that is even for a leader to really contemplate, because for whatever reason we don't want to hurt people's feelings, we don't want to call someone's baby ugly, whatever it is. I think while that might not work in a social setting, in a business setting, being able to speak the truth, the ugly truth, is the difference between potentially life and death of the business. And anyone can speak up and see truth and speak that truth as well. And holding yourself accountable, again, something that as a leader you try to model that behavior, but again, everybody can act in that way and show those behaviors. So I think it's really important. I think it's really essential that the wider company thinks of themselves as leaders.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's about, like you said earlier, if you create that environment where people feel like they can speak their truth, then that's going to help create that as well, which is amazing. It sounds like you've done a really great job of that within your team as well. So what's on the agenda? Like, what exciting things have you got up for the next sort of 12 months? I guess I love to leave with some positive plans and ideas for the future.
Yeah, so I mean, we're just in the process of a fundraise at the moment.
Okay.
Which fingers crossed if everything.
A lot of late nights.
Yeah.
Lots of work going into that. I'm sure.
I think that's true of most days at a startup. But if that comes through, I think that'll really unlock a whole new growth strategy for the business. How do we capitalize on new markets? How do we grow the team to accommodate that? And I think the challenge of taking the business to the next level with that funding, hopefully that we're going to get, using that as a way of growing new leaders, giving people new opportunities. I think it's those aspects that I'm really looking forward to, like the next iteration of Panacea.
It's so exciting, isn't it? And I can't wait to keep an eye on all the great things you and the team are up to. If anyone does want to get in touch, what's the best form? Is it LinkedIn or Twitter or?
Yeah, I mean, we're on all of that. You can find me on LinkedIn, and Panacea.com is the website. We'd always love to hear from anyone. So yeah, feel free to reach out.
I'm sure you will. I'm sure you get lots of people interested. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Charaka. It was great to hear your story and about all the exciting things going on at Panacea. Amazing.
Thanks for having me, Elly.
See you later. Bye.
We would like to thank all of our listeners for tuning in. It means a lot to us and we really appreciate your support.